coronavirus pandemic has been a big issue this year, and a lot of debate and discussion about reopening of businesses. So we thought this evening it would be good to talk to an actual business leader in the state of Maryland. And so we welcome to the show this evening the owner and publisher of the Business Monthly, Dan Medinger. Dan, thanks for joining us here this evening.
Good to be with you. Good to be with both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe for those of us in viewer and or listener land who don't know about the Business Monthly, maybe you would like to, explain a little bit about the paper. You took over about 2 years ago now, I think.
Yes. Yeah. It was September of 2018. The Business Monthly started in 1992, so it's a little bit venerable. It's been around reporting on the business community and its developments for more than 25 years. Our primary focus is Howard County, the BWI Business Corridor, and Anne Arundel County, kind of from Highway 32 down to Annapolis. So we're trying to have a little influence in the capital city as well. Newspaper has really done well since I took it over. We increased the number of outlets up to 380 places where people can get it. Circulation went up almost 40% as of the beginning of March, and then something happened, right? And things started to change. But we have a great team working there, and they've been doing a lot of things digitally these last 6 or 8 weeks that have kept us out in the public and keeping our business community as well as our other readers informed. So, but I love the newspaper business, so I'm happy to be back in it.
Yeah, I know you have a long history in the newspaper field. You've had an outstanding career, and I will say the Business Monthly was a really good paper, and over the past year and a half, 2 years, it's become much even better. So thank you for that. The statistics, and it's wonderful that you were hitting a peak in March, and now this has happened. How has everything affected your operations and how you're doing business?
Yeah, well, it's been an incredible challenge for us. The Business Monthly is an advertising-driven medium, and we are distributed at these 380 outlets, which are public places, coffee shops and banks and commercial buildings and so on. So we've been devastated really in 2 areas. One is the ad base has dried up because of the uncertainty. People are unclear what is going to happen next, so what should they be promoting or even how to begin. And on the other hand, how do we reach the audience when all these places have been shuttered? So that's one of the reasons why we've really been doing a lot more digital, because one of the wonderful things about the Business Monthly is that we have the advantage of covering this tremendous business community in Howard County, which is tremendously diverse, tremendously creative, and in many ways very stable. And so we're finding that there's a lot of businesses have done terrific, innovative things. People that used to make alcohol are now making hand sanitizers, and people who used to make something with plastics are now making plastic shields. And there's just a lot of things that are being done. And like I say, one of the great things about the Business Monthly is we get to cover that on a regular basis. These just have become very unusual times, and we've still been doing our work. So that's been good. I mean, obviously our website has zoomed up. The open rates on our Biz Weekly, which went from, we used to just come out on Tuesdays. Now we come out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and our open rates are more than 45%. So we're communicating. But I'm a guy that likes ink on paper, so I like when people read the newspaper.
Mm-hmm. So, Jason, do you have any questions?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I was the reception was coming through a bit slow. I wasn't sure if it finished. Yeah, Dan, actually, I do have a question. I'm just curious if let's go back to the pre-COVID world, if you can remember that. And I'm just curious as far as what innovations perhaps have you put into place that sort of has helped make, in some ways, Business Monthly more immune from some of the larger macro trends facing both print and digital journalism. Are you seeing any ways to avoid some of the pitfalls that other media outlets have had to deal with over the past, well, since basically the 1990s?
Yes, yes. Well, it's a very interesting narrative. Big circulation dailies have massive problems. Uh, but throughout the newspaper industry, specialty publications have done very, very well. And frankly, it's the specialty publications that are saving the big dailies because they've bought up all the other little community papers around. So in a way, because our niche is very focused, our audience is very concentrated, I think we are protected from that in some ways that um, would happen in other media. Also because we're distributed for free. People expect news to be free these days. I mean, people who've tried to sell it on the internet and to sell subscriptions know the challenges of that. So as long as we are accessible to the public without that barrier of you have to reach into your wallet to find out what we've got to say, our potential is great. Our distribution in Howard County is bigger than the Howard County Times, and I need to do a better job of making that clear to people. We're the only locally owned print media, and we have a bigger distribution. So, but we don't have the barrier that Howard County Times has, which means you have to be a paid subscriber. So I think we've got great potential as a niche publication.
So Dan, getting back to
Have you seen any your advertising base? Have you seen any interesting trends there
Well,
in terms of who's advertising?
Yeah, the ad base had been going up. Again, we were up about 40% over the previous year as of March. And a lot of advertising is about relationships, and you have to meet people, and you need to help understand what they're trying to do with their business so you can talk about how this print media can help them. And obviously all this shutdown where you don't get the opportunity to make appointments and go and see 4 or 5 people a day makes it very difficult. I mean, we're continuing to talk to the people we already know, but you always need to be talking to new people, and it's hard to meet them in this kind of a digital format. So it's a new era, and hopefully there will be some changes coming soon.
Okay. And just one quick follow-up to that. In terms of like types of businesses, have you seen any significant shifts in terms of, oh yeah, it's more car dealers or it's more banks or anything like that? Just curious as to who's really reaching out to advertise via print these days.
It's interesting, and I think it's a reflection of the county we live in. There's a lot of the IT firms, some of the builders, people who do a lot of HR. We've been trying to work the government contractors, but a lot of them do things they're not allowed to talk about, so they can't promote, they can't advertise. But when you get into the IT firms that support them, so we've kind of become, we're not a technical journal, but those kind of areas are opening up to us, or have been opening up to us.
So Dan, you spoke earlier about some of the operational challenges, and I some of your answers to Jason's questions lent towards I think what a lot of people and businesses are going to have to deal with as we come through this crisis, which is just changing the way that we do business and changing the way we do our work and change the way we live. What are some of the things, I mean, you're a small business guy. I mean, I know you care about the people who work for you. What's been the impact? And I'm sure they're doing a great job. And what's been the human impact on the pandemic so far with your staff? What's how they had to adapt in order to get the work done?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And when we first dispersed back, I think it was March 16th or 14th or somewhere, I think there was this moment where when we all said goodbye to one another by touching elbows instead of shaking hands, that we would be back together soon. And obviously that is not happening. what I have learned from the staff is that, frankly, they're all working very hard, but every day they also are dealing with their own realities. We have four young mothers on our staff who are now at home, basically doing homeschooling with kids, and kids that are in lockdown. And for them to concentrate on their work during a work day while that's going on in their household is something that we just simply have to adjust to. And so work that we used to do between 9 and 3 sometimes is now done at 8 and 10 o'clock at night, which is very hard on the staff because they've already had a big day of taking care of their families. And that challenge has, frankly, that burden maybe has gotten heavier as the time has gone on because it's very difficult. Now, we have kept everybody on. We've continued everybody on our payroll. In some ways, frankly, we're paying even more because we're doing more in the digital world than we were before. But to understand that the staff has these personal things that normally would not be part of a workplace or that you wouldn't have to take into account has been part of my everyday work experience.
So then I guess the question is, I mean, you of course you follow, the whole thing about the state reopening and the state not reopening at all, and then going into phase 1 and then partial phase 1 elsewhere, and now I think everybody's in phase 1 and now we're going into phase 2. I guess in the light of your business and what you do, what does reopening, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, how does that relate to you? And what are some of the hurdles that you're facing, you're going to be facing in terms of bringing back everybody under the same roof, or even getting everybody, based on your last answer, onto a same schedule.
Right. Well, this phase schedule may make sense from a administrative point of view, but the reality is that when you're closed, and when you're open, you're open. This partial opening is just very, very problematic for staffing, not just for me, but for almost all small business. If I'm running a restaurant and I know that I need 50 tables filled to make it work, and you tell me I can have 12 of them open, this doesn't necessarily help me get back on my feet. I need 50 tables filled. And so this phase thing, like I say, may make sense from an administrative point of view, but in some ways the phases, to my way of thinking, make running a business more complicated than when we just said we're closed or we're open. And I get why we're going in phases, but we got to go through them as quickly as we can because in this county, it's interesting, but most of small businesses are 10 employees or less. And so the experiences that I'm having, I'm sure are being experienced by all the business owners, or most of the business owners, I should say, because they're going through the same thing. I mean, how do you get your people back when they have all these personal issues that, frankly, they need to deal with in their home life? And, that's not going to get any better. Summer camps have been virtually closed. And so for, parents, this is not a good situation. Summers are challenging enough, and then maybe with schools. And so it's kind of brought a lot of things into the workplace that you wouldn't normally deal with. And yet you still have to get the work done, and you've got clients that are expecting it and so on. So it's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one question for you. Oh, sorry, my bad. Sorry, sound delay there. No, I did have one question for you, Dan. I'm just curious, and again, we've only had a couple of months of living with the COVID-19 situation, but I am curious, as someone who conducts focus groups, I have noticed a difference in the kinds of intelligence I'm able to gather, whether I'm doing it in person versus online. When I do virtual focus group sessions, sometimes you catch people in very personal, private situations. They're doing the interview from home, or sometimes in their car, and I have to tell them, please, stop, pull over. But I'm just curious, have your reporters, have they mentioned any differences in terms of the way interviewees might be opening up or the kinds of information they're sharing?
That's a good question. I don't think I've heard that. In some ways, I've heard that it's easier to find people. You know, when you're in the media tracking people down, is sometimes a challenge. It seems like people want to talk because I guess we're kind of isolated, and so
Yeah.
they've experienced better interviews and people who are more accessible. I don't know is that they've heard a lot of like soul searching or that kind of thing, but you know, people are very nervous, and this uncertainty is a difficulty. We made an ad that some people didn't quite understand, but you know, the Greek story of Sisyphus, who had to spend his eternity pushing the rock back up the hill. We made an ad that said, yes, you're going to have to push that rock back up the hill. So kind of like get over it. We're going to have to start over. And some people were amused by it, and but I think that's where we are. It's just, but we don't know when we're going to start pushing that rock back up, and all the resources that is going to be available to get that done. So it's, but anyway, I think it's good stuff that's going on.
Yeah. I do agree, just based on my limited experience. You know, from a opinion research perspective, it does really seem like people do want to talk more. They want to reach out. They want to have some sort of connection with someone. Maybe it's just a fact that they just need new stimuli and they're tired of staring at the squirrels in their backyard every day. But it does seem as though people are opening up a little bit more.
Yes, yes. The you know, because the nature of the media is that it's a very public work, and you know, not to be able to mix with the public, not be able to experience that. I even find when you talk to people that are wearing masks, you know, if I can only see your eyes, I'm not sure if you're smiling or frowning. You know, I mean, it's not even easy when you do encounter somebody person to person to communicate in the same way. So it's you know, I find that an extra challenge as well when you meet folks.
So Dan, you mentioned before the resilience of the business community. You know, the distillers who are making hand sanitizer, the plastics companies making face masks. You know, how do you you know, what's your general sense of the tenor of the business community now? I mean, to see amateur correspondents like us, or maybe not like us, talk about it, you know, all over the place. You know, everybody is chomping at the bit. Everybody is getting ready to go out of business. And I certainly don't want to make light of the fact that there are 40 million people who are now out of work. And surely a lot of companies, you know, won't be able to survive this. But what's your take now on the business community, at least in the area, you know, that you reach with the paper?
Well, you know, it's a very interesting question, because I think there's really three tracks to it. There are some people in our community that have never been busier. They're working more. They're expanding. They can't find people to work, and these are, you know, people that are providing certain kind of IT services. And out of this are going to come new opportunities that are going to continue to evolve. But then there's other places that have simply been devastated. And, you know, we focus a lot on the restaurants, places that, you know, we often just took for granted. It's like, you know, tonight is our takeout Thursday night. So, you know, we always try and find some place to experience. But a lot of those folks have just been devastated. But it's not just them. I mean, BWI Airport, BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, 95% of their business has gone away. And of all of those shops inside, there's nobody shopping in those places. So it's not just the airport, like the planes aren't flying. All of those people have lost their jobs. And for business owners that have invested their life savings and their dreams into creating a business, people like me who don't get a paycheck every other Friday, this is very scary. And then I think there's that other track where people have simply just given up, and I think that's very difficult too, and hard to listen to. But for most of the people that we deal with are Main Street businesses, and they're in that world of, it's a day and day struggle on good times. And so right now, I mean, they frankly just need a lot of encouragement that this is going to come back and there's going to be a place for you in the marketplace.
Mm. So Dan, one question I do want to ask you that is a little bit of an extra from what we were, from the original. You and I thought about it in my original questions. I mean, you have been around the media business for quite a while, and I'm only asking you to give as much opinion as you care to, but when was the last year that you can recall that's been as newsworthy as this one?
Yeah. This is, you mentioned it earlier about referencing 1968. Maybe people who listen to your podcast don't know exactly what that means, but that was an extraordinary year, and I think we are having that year now, and it's going to take some great leadership to help guide us forward, because it's almost at every level we're now having problems with the problems with George Floyd, which frankly have simmered for too long with us just saying, oh, we'll address it some other day or whatever. I mean, we're going to have to really do the work to deal with racism and the consequences of that right now. And if we don't, we just brush it off and say, well, we'll just go back to business as usual. And maybe to some way this virus is forcing us to focus on that. I don't know, but I just think there's a lot of things that are coming up, and whether it be internationally, nationally, statewide, or certainly throughout the county, that needs our attention.
Yeah, it seems to be some sort of an insidious parlor trick played by some supreme force that here's going to be this thing that's going to keep you home and keep you focused for months because you don't want to get sick or die of it. Oh, and by the way, in the world, all these things are going to happen, and you've got to watch it. And there's kind of no choice but to deal with it. I mean, we all go out and we do our things, and yes, we can exercise now, and we can go to the golf course, and we can do a lot of our fun, but there's not a lot of escaping reality this year, which in 68 I was a baby, so I have no memory of a year like this, but this is coming at us live in color and now in real time.
Yes, I agree, and I hope that we can use whatever benefit we can get out of that to end up being a more just and more successful society. One of the things that you mentioned earlier about 42 million people being out of work, I also heard that billionaires in this country, their net worth went up 19% in the last 8 weeks. And so the income inequality, 19% in 8 weeks, yes. So income inequality has just gotten a lot worse. And these are fundamental problems that if we don't find a way to deal with them, things will only get worse.
I'd love to follow up with you on that income inequality question, but unfortunately, I know because of time, I do want to go back, because you're so deeply embedded within the community, just to get your perspective on the state of, and obviously we've seen it at the rally, which took place, was led by the youth. I believe it's called HOCO Justice was the name of the organization that sponsored it. Did an amazing event, brought in some very compelling speakers to speak about issues of race, on state violence, on police brutality. Of course, some police officers were there, including some very high-ranking police officers within Howard County, to express solidarity with those who participated in the rally and vigil. I'm just curious, from your macro perspective of thinking back on Howard County, relationships between the community, between police, what have you seen, what have you noticed as far as the big trends are concerned?
related to the police issues?
Well, related to race, related to policing practices. There's a lot of different ways we can go here.
Yeah.
But whatever comes to mind as being sort of a most significant thing you'd like to point out as far as developments in Howard County.
Well, one of the things I'm fond of saying, and I think probably others say it as well, is that if something can be done, it can be done in Howard County. And we're a county that has many blessings in terms of the people who live here, our wealth, the diversity that's here. And so we have an opportunity to do something I think that maybe would be more difficult in other places because we're here. Our school system continues to suffer from an achievement gap based on race. And there's data about that I think, we're going to have to figure out a way to say what are the root causes and do the hard work of fixing it. People like me sometimes in the media are fond of putting out a headline, but the headline isn't getting the work done. And so I think we've got our work to do. And I think what you mentioned earlier about those young people that put that rally together, I mean, it was stunning. And so there's hope for youth that maybe they will fill in these gaps that previous generations left care of. So, but I'm confident that if it can be done, it can be done in Howard County.
Bill?
I hope you agree.
We shall see.
If people want to know more about the Business Monthly, go online and read it and all sorts of other things. How do they do that?
Well, thank you for asking. If you go to www.bizmonthly.com, bizmonthly.com, we post each of our issues up there. You also can sign up for join our e-community, and we will connect you with all of the latest business news available. And but I think one of the nice things about a newspaper is it's where we as a community can come together to share information and to share thoughts. And so frankly, the more we can build that readership, I think the better chance we have to be that great community.
Well, thank you for that. And we'll also put the link to the Biz Monthly website on the post for the web, and also for the iTunes and podcast download sites that we use. So,
good.
Dan,
thank you for what you two are doing with this podcasting. It's this also is a great way to give people the opportunity to share their views and to learn from one another. So thanks for doing that.
Well, and it's a good way to keep a couple middle-aged white guy bloggers honest.
Good for you.
Maybe not. But thank you, Dan, and please, we'd love to have you come on again at some point.
Look forward to it.
And next time, Dan, we might shift the focus a little bit, talk about politics, and you can tell us some of your favorite stories from your personal experiences, or however you want to address that question.
That would be fun. I would look forward to that.
Cool.
All right. So, Jason, anything in closing?
Nope. Just really glad we could have Dan on and to offer his insights. It's always good when you speak to someone who's got that sort of institutional knowledge and can really share that depth of experience. So Dan, I was glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dan, please do stay on a little bit after we sign off. So, our next episode, we still haven't planned a next episode yet, but we're going to have a couple episodes next week. And thank you all for listening tonight. And with Jason Boones, my name is Bill Woodcock, and you have been watching another edition or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.